That's kids with super soakers out there. So,
all right, you know, one of mine's going batshit upstairs as well.
Right, yeah. Hey, Max. Hey, Mark.
Okay, I'd just get going. I think.
Survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, get going. Everybody to this live ACO Q&A. My name is Ed Wright. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and we've got a very special webinar. Get a Grip, which is extremely witty, and of course that's it's in reference to the relationship between the operator and key grip. Let me go ahead and introduce the panel. So I have Rodrigo Gutierrez, ACO.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. I'm going to say Ian Mackay, but I could say Ian Mackay, ACO. And we have Gary Hims, and we have Jim Philpott. Everyone all right? Feeling good?
Thanks.
Good. Thank you. You?
Very good. But yeah, it's sunny out there. So yeah, it's we're in here. A little bit of light in. Let's crack on. So yeah, let's get into it. We are streaming on, well, hopefully we're streaming on Facebook and with our friends at Cogoptics TV, restreaming to their various channels. So let's get into it. I wonder if everyone could just start us off. Maybe I'll start with you, Rod. I just do an introductory kind of classic question. What are you up to, and what are you most looking forward to about things going back to normal post-COVID?
Well, at the moment, I'm having a really good time, actually. You know, I've been quite busy with organizing the Operators Award this year, which has had many changes. And I hope that once we release the information, everybody's going to be happy with we are trying to make it a bit more inclusive. So I've been busy doing that, enjoying the family. And no, I mean, you know, in a way, I feel very lucky. My life is good. What I'm looking forward in the future? Well, I like to see what the new world order will be, how the world is actually changed, and look into the future, really. Because I think that is quite good. And I think that this will bring a lot of changes in our industry, which is always great. I'm always very positive about changes. And there will be hopefully new blood coming through, and, you know, things will get a little bit churned up, and, you know, a whole regeneration of it. And actually looking forward to see how, once the industry gets back, how the crews will take the challenge to make the environment safe, how will be the way that we will get back to work. I think that I'm a great believer that producers should be involved in the crews, because we can tell them how to do something in a safer, better way. You know, after all, we have been doing it for a while. And that's our strength, you know. I mean, the camera department is always a department that deals with problems, you know, and we're not frightened of them. So, you know, that's what I would be looking forward, really, to get back into that amazing pool of people that create what we call films, you know.
Well said. And what about you, Ian?
Yeah, good. I've been enjoying it, I'd say. It's been quite nice being home, being with the family, not having any sort of worry about where their next job's going from, and just getting time at home and doing stuff around the house has been really nice. Only just starting to feel the sort of like the itch to see someone else. Which is, I guess, a big part of like going back to work with such a social job that we have, and every job is a whole new bunch of new faces and new characters that we all get very close to for a intense period of time, and then you move on to the next one and to do the same again. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But in some ways, I think we'll be looking back on this time and missing it as well. I think it's been really fun in many ways. Like, it's been very polarizing experiences depending on what your situation is, as to whether this has been a terrible time or something to take positives from. But yeah, financially it's been disastrous, but in other ways it's been fantastic. So I think I'll miss it in some ways. But it feels like in the past week or so, it really feels like it's time to go back to work and try and find a new way of keeping a little bit of what's great about what's happened during this time, and along with working too. So that will be difficult, seeing as we're going to have to work quite solidly to get back to where we were beforehand. But I think it's highlighted how important it is to have a home life and be close to your family.
Absolutely, yeah, and we certainly have to do a lot of adapting when we go back, won't we? But how about you, Gary? What's where are you at, and what are you most looking forward to about going back?
Well, I'm looking forward to going back, so I don't have to do as much decorating, as much gardening as I'm doing at the moment. Because I haven't stopped it. And running, I can have a break.
Are you being forced to do that?
No, not really. But you have to keep. I have to have a sort of schedule every day, because I'm a bit hyperactive. So today I was stripping walls. Tomorrow I'm painting the ceiling. You know, Friday I've got my grandson. So I always have to have regimental every day. I just get a bit bored. But the thing about going back, I'm actually on the Batman at the moment, and we'd shot for 8 weeks. So they're aiming to get us back at the beginning of September, which for me at my age now, it's not the end of the world to have time off, but because there's 15 in our crew, and you know, some young groups where there's 32 children, they're desperate to get back for the money, really. So that's the worry. I don't know how much longer the boys can go on. We hope to start in September. But they put loads of procedures in place where we've got sort of something like a 72 code from Warner Brothers, what we're going to do when we get back, and I won't bore you with it all now. And the shoot's been extended. I think it's safe for me to say it's roundabout. We've already shot. I've been on it about 15 weeks. We've shot 8 weeks, and now we're going to shoot another 24 weeks, and we're still going to use all the stuff we've shot. But that's to show you the process, how much slower the process is going to be when we get back. I think we're going to try as much as we can. I'm not 100% sure on this, to put the camera on a remote ahead most of the time, and just have me and the focus puller on my focus puller remote, me on the dolly, headphones back to the. We all know how that works, you know. As much as we can, do it that way, really. But it's going to be slow, because if we want to allow a dance floor or something like that, everyone's got to get out the studio. Well, all the boys do that, and then they get out the studio and the sparks come in, and they light, and that's how it's going to be. So, but they're all ready for that. They've got all that set up. But yeah, it's probably about time to go back now, I think. Yeah. To Gotham City, where it's going to be night shoots and rain.
Yeah, it's that's the extreme version, isn't it? When you're doing those kind of pressure situations at night, and with.
Hey, I keep getting on my internet. Are you getting me all right? This keeps coming up. Craig.
Yeah, I think we're just about getting you, aren't we, guys? So should be okay.
Yeah, I'm freezing.
No worries. Jim, how about you, mate?
I've got a very young family, so it's kind of worked for me in some senses. I've been at home, whereas I've never taken 3 months off work, probably 3 weeks maximum in 20 years. So, but I'm surprisingly used to it. I feel like I know what retirement's going to be like when that day comes, and it's not as bad as I thought. But it's been amazing. But it's, you know, financially it is draining. You know, Gary's been gripping a while longer than I have, so you know, for anybody sort of a little bit younger, it is a bit more daunting. But you know, going back to what Rodrigo picked up on, camera departments are used to problem solving, and I think that when things get back to a version of how they used to be. Grips as well, you know, we're used to problem solving, so I just think we will find a way forward. But no, it's been a joy. But yeah, I'm getting you know, most of us have spent the majority of our working lives on a film set, so it has been a big thing to not be going to a car park at 5 o'clock in the morning and standing in a queue, and we're all so used to it. But and I haven't set an alarm for 3 months, so yeah, I'm going to turn my phone on in a couple of weeks and see if it rings. So, but no, it's been great. It's been great. But I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again. You know, you do miss the life. It's the life that we've all chosen to be in the film industry. And some people complain about the hours, but I genuinely still love it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to it. But yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You know, there aren't going to be bedtimes, you know, when I go back to work. But, you know, we just got to, you know, I think most people are looking to try and find a different balance. And it's easier said than done when you start shooting a film, because you just get into it for as long as it's required. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. It's been good. My tan's faded over the last week because the weather's been patchy, but I've been doing my best. It's been cool. It's been good.
Keep topping it up. Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you were saying, Gary, because I'm a bit like that as well. I'm a bit sporadic. If I don't have a structure or have a, you know, essentially have a, this is why the job is so great, because the call sheet tells us exactly what we're doing. There's a first AD there telling us exactly what we're going to do next. It's my perfect job. So it's a bit of a challenge, isn't it, to, you know, motivate yourself and sort of, you know, set your targets and have jobs. So yeah, I haven't done as much decorating as you though. So yeah, I wonder, I've very rudely not introduced you guys in terms of how you know each other. So I wonder, Rod, could you just tell us how you know Gary, and then Ian, how you know Jim?
I met Gary many years ago, mate, when the days of London Weekend Television existed. And Gary came in as, what were you, the grip in the film department, Gary?
That's right. There was 6 people in the film department. That was all, and they got me in as the grip. Yeah, I was a footman, really.
That's when we originally met, and then over the years, obviously, we have worked on different projects together, on dailies. You know, you know, I mean, Gary is one of the most experienced grips in the UK, and I think he's worked with the great majority of all the great operators. You know, so his pedigree is fantastic. Yeah, the whole. So yeah, I mean, we've known each other for a very long time. We remain friends. You know, we haven't fallen out. I still have a sense of humor every time I work with him.
We'll wait till the end of this webinar. Let's just see how it goes. Anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
So Ian,
it brings me to start running, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jim and I first worked together in on The Hollow Crown, which is a BBC Shakespeare TV series that went on for quite a few weeks. And Zach Nicholson was the DOP, and it was, I think, my first job working as an operator for Zach. And Jim, I think it was your first job with Zach too.
Yeah, it was.
And yeah, it was a long job and lots of locations and muddy fields and old castles and all sorts of locations. And we spent a lot of time, as you do with your grip, and we had a lot of fun together. We had a lot of challenges to get through, but Zach runs a really lovely department. He's a great guy, and there's a great atmosphere all around. So we got a good relationship, worked well together, and it's continued on since. Yes, a lot of great photos from that job.
Yeah, which we'll share in a bit later, perhaps. So Gary, I'm just wondering if you could help us out for maybe viewers who aren't exactly aware of how you come into the process. Where if your production's starting out from the very beginning, who actually brings you in the first instance? Is it the head of department, like the DOP for you, or is it production, or where does it normally happen for you?
It's a bit of both nowadays. I mean, early on it would have been the cameraman, but sometimes, because I've had that run on Star Wars where they had a few different cameramen. I'd done the first Star Wars, The Force Awakens, with Dan Mendel, and then I was like in with that team, which was Simon Daniel, the producer, and then I think Greg Fraser came and done Rogue One, and they put me in with Greg, and I had an interview with him, and it went on like that. Bradford Young was the next one, I think, and I went in with him, and so 50-50. But I think Sam Mendes was influential in me getting the Bond film, I think. I had an interview with Hoyter van Hoyterman, and he said, this isn't really an interview because Sam's asked me to get you to do this anyway. So it's sort of a cameraman. It's not often an operator anymore. It used to be always the operator. I think when I first started, John Daly, who's camera operator, used to put me in. Sean Savage used to put me in. But then as these films have got slightly bigger, the production are more involved, I think. Yeah. I remember he put me in with Pete Cavaciucci actually put me in with Roger to do Skyfall, which was a great break. Yeah, so and then I got in with him, so met Sam Mendes. Sam Mendes then put me in for that. Roger and Sam put me in for, and that's how it for 1970. So it's a lot of luck, really. You know, you're in the right place at the right time. You might get on with someone, and it works well. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting how it spreads, isn't it?
It's I mean, tomorrow Rod might get a film and say, "Look, just get Gary," you know, and so it can come from 3 different angles, really, all different people putting, because a lot of people are coming over from the States now on these films, operators or South Africa and places like that. They wouldn't have a grip over here, so it can be recommended from production, really, producers and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Rod, Gary mentioned there the operator doesn't necessarily choose the grip so much on the bigger stuff. Is it? Would you go along with that? Is that what you found as well?
I do. I mean, I would say that the system changed quite a few years back when the American gripping system began to get introduced in the UK, but it morphed because in America, the gripping crew functions different to the gripping crew in England, and they are much bigger anyway. So when American directors of photography began to work in the UK, obviously they were used to the American system, and the grips began to morph into more independent team, unlike in my early days in the industry, where the grips were really part of the camera department, and the operator was the main person in the camera department, apart from obviously the director of photography. The director of photography had a more senior role. So that began to change the system, and because of it, and I think that is tribute to the grips in this, that can work on any production, on any size, you know, with whoever, and they really rise to the occasion. So that's what has made that department become more noticeable with producers and with directors. And I'm very glad for it, because in a way, you know, it gives me the opportunity to work with all these guys, team together, which was incredibly important in those days. But now, I mean, I haven't really had the opportunity to crew a grip that works with me for the last 5 years, and it's been great. I mean, I don't know if it's me that I'm very easy to work with, or they are very kind to me, or whatever it is. But we have had I have had a great experience with all of them, you know. So in a way, that's really good. That change is incredibly important. That the grip department made possible for them to do it. You know what I mean? Because of the pool of really, really good people here, you know. I mean, I don't have a problem going into a film and they say to me, Gary, or, you know, whoever, and I'm always very happy because they're all really good. Yeah. So that's in a way. For us, sometimes it gets a little bit complicated because we don't get the choice of perhaps the equipment that we would like to use on a job is decided by the grip and director of photography. We got to make it work. We got to keep our wits about how we're going to make it work. And it's a great possibility to actually understand the workings of the crew. I mean, we can develop the conversation, and for me, the most important person that I work with on the set is actually the grip. So you got to understand them as human beings and how they pick in order to mold what you're trying to do and create something that makes sense, you know. So
absolutely, Jim. I wonder if you could just sort of follow up from Gary. Really, there is it a similar deal for you?
Case of, I'd worked with someone 5 years ago, a producer, and she's crewing up, kind of as Gary said. They've got an American DP that's come over, or someone that doesn't have a crew in the UK, and then suddenly you're the one person that gets introduced, or there's a couple of you, and so it goes on. So Ian, I'd like to say that Ian still fights my corner when it comes to asking for me if he's on a job, but also sometimes if producers, as you know, Gary mentioned, if the grip has succeeded and done a great job on a previous film and they know the drill, it's crazy not to have the same, because it's on the bigger jobs, and I've only done a handful really compared to Gary, but it is a real machine, as you all know. When it comes to being a key on those jobs, there are so many people, and it's evolved from year ago. There's a lot going on a film set now, but yeah, it's now and again it's an operator, but more often than not it's a cameraman or production is probably production 50% of the time at the moment, or when I do get my next job. So it comes in three sort of sets really.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously that relationship, especially if you're doing dolly work or even crane work, is so intuitive and so it's sort of second. It has to be second nature, doesn't it? That it, you know, if you do come across a grip, or grip comes across an operator that they haven't worked with before, they've got to somehow find that, you know, in the sort of a short space of time. Ian, is it something that you can learn just straight off the bat, or do you?
When it doesn't necessarily work like that, there's other people's opinions at play, and the desire to have the same team around you is understandably quite strong, because you go through that period of decoding each other and figuring each other out, and knowing the shorthand for what's needed for certain things. But in the same way, when things are mixed up and you end up with a new team on the next job, it presents new relationships that can be just as, you know, fulfilling, and you end up like I was saying before, you work so closely with a team of people so intensely for 12 weeks, whatever, and then you might not see them again for 3 years, but you can still strangely pick that up. If you start another job with them 3 years later, it very quickly locks back into the sort of smooth way of working that you had before. There is, as Rodrigo says, such a great talent pool of grips in the country that I don't feel that I ever get anyone that I'm worried about. And also you end up in a circle of people. So, you know, I worked with Jim early in my career, and most of the problem trying to get Jim on the job is the fact that he's not available. You sort of get out of sync with people, you know, even if it's just like a week or two, you know, finishing one job and onto the next one doesn't quite work out, but then you go for recommendations, and I've ended up working with people who have worked, you know, have come up learning under Jim or with Jim, and it's you end up in in an expanded circle of people that think and work in a similar fashion that helps you slot into things, yeah, quite quickly. And I think that shorthand for how you communicate, sometimes it can gel straight away. Sometimes I felt that instinct when you're on a dance floor or a dolly and you find someone that in those situations on a crane or a dance floor or whatever, that before you're doing a little like pointy thing with your finger, which you think is very clear what you want to happen with a dolly, but actually to someone that's concentrating on other things, it's very unclear. But they make their own decision before you've even tried to do a funny wiggle finger, and you go, oh great, that's sorted that one out. And yeah, I feel like I've got that with Jim, like on a dance floor or a crane, whatever. There's a synergy that works really well, and that's where the desire to just roll on to the next one comes from, because it just feels so easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if I'm just going to turn to the chat, and we've got a question here from Joel Gill. Hi, Joel. Forgive my ignorance, but can you please explain the difference between the grips and electrics in the US versus the grips and electrics in the UK? Who wants to take that one?
Harry, you know the system better, no? You want to answer that, Gary?
Was you frozen there? I didn't hear that question. Hello?
Oh, there you are. I'll do it again,
I
Gary.
didn't hear that question.
This is from Joel Gill. Forgive my ignorance, but can you please explain the difference between grips and electrics in the US versus grips and electrics in the UK?
You're frozen again.
I'm
sorry,
I think Rod's going to take this one.
The difference is, though, that in America, the grip department, they have a larger body of people, and electricians deal with anything to do with the power and the lights, while the grip department, they deal with all the gels, the flags, anything to do with blacking out, whatever is required. So the system is, for example, and they are the ones who do that. Now, in America, the terminology of the key grip is because the department is bigger. So you will have the key grip running the whole department. And on that, then you will have the guys that are specializing in the gels or the frames or the whatever. And then you will have a dolly grip, and the dolly grip will only look after the dolly, whatever the camera is doing with the dolly. Obviously, if the dolly is not working, they will go and help the other guys. But basically, that's what it is. But then they do carry more personnel because of it. So it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. And that's always been the great dispute in this country, where American directors of photography at the beginning, and then obviously English directors of photography that were working in America wanted to bring that system here, because it's very fast, if you see what I'm saying. If you're talking to somebody about putting a lamp, you know that everybody's listening to it, and each department is already preparing whatever they need to do. But producers never really like the idea of employing more grips. So, so that's where the difference falls, basically. The gripping department, it works more closely with the electrician department in America that we do here in the UK. So they will be the ones that put, whatever. As soon as it's not a lamp or a cable, they will be doing the rest.
Gotcha. Well, I hope that's answered that question, Joel, for you. How's Gary doing? And you've relocated, I noticed.
It's freezing up.
Yeah, so hopefully it's a bit better, but Rob was still breaking up a little bit there. I got you then. Have you got me okay?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Well, I'll try and work out what you're saying. And
this, Jim, I wonder if you could tell us for you, where is at its very best when you've got an operator and you working together? How does that collaboration work when it's absolutely working, firing on all cylinders? And what's good about it when it's at its best, would you say?
I would say, sort of going back to kind of how Ian sort of described it, when you've worked together with someone for a while, or you just get on and they quickly understand that you're just not going to let them down, or if the crane needs to move in the right direction, it's going to start heading that way before the finger wiggles. That's when it's sort of at its best, because you've done what they've needed to do before they've kind of they've had the thought, but you've started moving the piece of equipment to where it needs to go for the camera and for them, and it's already happening. And yeah, when that happens, if Ian's on the dance floor and the finger goes, but I've already turned the wheels, you do feel in sync, and it is a glorious thing. I love dance floor moves. I could be on a dance floor all day long. I do genuinely still love it. But yeah, it's when you know you've got it right all day, that is when it's at its best, I would say.
Wonder if you could just, like, I'm just thinking if anyone, maybe students that don't know what dance floor means in terms of.
Yeah, basically, rather than laying a lateral track to a point-to-point or multiple points, sometimes we'll lay a variable sort of materials, but normally it's ply, on ply, or MDF, and we sort of structure that and layer it so that it's a seamless surface, so that you can move
them. Yeah.
I like operating off a monitor as well, usually, so that I can give a disapproving look, or look down at see if the dollies were a mark where we made before. But that's the thing about dance floors, that they give you that freedom that actors don't, surprisingly, always hit their marks, or things don't happen in the timing that you hope that they will do. So it's a fluid thing. So you try and get as much time as you can to go through in the rehearsal and go through the blocking, if you're lucky enough to have stand-ins, try and go through every move. So when this happens, we want to be here, and we want to be here for this, that, and the other. But the fact is that the world doesn't work like that. So you do need to adapt, and timings will change, and heights and positions change. You need to kind of go with the flow, and you could be a long way off many marks. It doesn't mean that the shot's no good. It's just you're following the action, and you're going in the direction that you wanted to be for the scene. And quite often Jim and I will look at each other after a take and go, well, that's not what we planned, and everyone just goes, brilliant, moving on. You're like, well, no one needs to know that we didn't hit a single mark on the way. It looked great anyway. So I love dance floors too. I like to have that freedom.
What about you, Gary? I was just wondering, do you have
on a dance floor? Sometimes the marks are just a guide, really, because you can't rely on the actor to be exactly the same. You hit your mark every time, and you might be behind the back of a head, really. So you have to be watching that actor really all the time, aiming, so he knows. So you can give him a little look. Look, I've got to creep in here. They're 3 foot off their mark, or they're 18 inches off their mark. I'm going to go in another 18 inches to adjust to that mark. But that's as you said about instinct. You do that naturally after a while. I think it's something you just do. You just most people I work with, we just work as a team. We're one person in a way, and we just know what. And we don't even have to say you had to do that. It's obvious. As I'd say, we wouldn't have had a shot if I'd have hit the mark. There's no shot, and they're used to that. Everybody, you just go for it really. But of course, there's shots where you can't do that because the focus is so critical. That if you're on a rail and you've got to be bang on that, and you've got to keep that speed the same as well, because you start speeding up or slowing down because you're trying to match some dialogue or something, and I'm not going to get there, I better speed up. It's going to throw the focus puller completely out of sync because he's going in on that. And all the boys have been focus pullers here; they'll understand. You always got to go. So you always, it's the three of us really: operator, focus puller, and the grip, all flowing like that.
So there's a very much an unspoken, sometimes non-verbal kind of thing going on, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. Even adjusting the jig sometimes, you think, well, I'd like to creep up a bit there because, he stepped back and his shoulder's here. We have to, it's tricky though. You can set yourself up for getting told off, but
Never blame the grip. Never.
Oh no, always blame the grip. That's all right. We'll have a smart
It's all right.
line.
Take it.
But I mean, it's all this is to do with trust, respect, and I mean, the operator sometimes doesn't say much, but we are looking all the time at how something is developing, so we can tweak. You know what I mean? I mean, the worst part of anything is if you start telling any member of the crew how to do their job, because you lose them. You know what I mean? What you want is people to concentrate in what you're trying to do. And I mean, you got very experienced grips in this conversation. So therefore, over the years, they have developed that second sight for the operator, because he tells you what he's about to do. He tells you when he's going to stop. He gives you the information, so you can let the frame flow and come to stop naturally. But that's because he's an experienced guy and he's worked with really good people. You know what I mean? So you try to bring this into the job as the operator. You try to bring this with the whole crew. You got to give them the confidence that we're all working as a team. Because you, as an operator, if the focus pulley doesn't get it sharp and the grip is in the wrong place, it doesn't matter what amazing operator you are, you ain't going to get it. So you have to bring the team together. You have to allow them breathing space, and you have to give them respect and confidence that we are all part of this thing. You know what I mean? I never, when I set things up, let me rephrase that. When things go wrong, it's either my fault for not giving the right information, or the team hasn't gelled. You know what I mean? As Gary was saying, when the shot is going great, because it's like a dance, everybody's dancing, and at the operator, you're not really operating. It's just happening in front of you. You know how the hell you're doing it, but it's happening, and that's what you want. That dance. But suddenly, it's like you hear the Steadicam operators. You get really technical Steadicam operators like Pete Robertson, and he will describe technically, absolutely, what his body was feeling, or his muscle, or Pete Cavaciuti did the same. You know what I mean? But when you see them doing it, and you see what they're doing with the actor, it's like a dance. It's as strong as your weakest link. So the operator really needs to pass that information, and they, people get to know you very, very quickly, how you like doing things. Some people say more, some people say less. We're all different. We're good at this or good at that, but it's working as a team, and having that team respecting each other. As Gary points, he respects the focus pullers because he knows that it's difficult for them if he, changes the pace, or So that's what for me really is all about, respect and trust, So they know what you're looking at,
I think you've summed it up really well there. I think we can almost just finish it there, to be honest, Rod.
No.
Very good, Rod.
But it is. It's having seen them all coming through and the rest of it. But don't take me wrong, you might work with somebody that is not experienced, but then the operator can slowly tweak that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
In terms of, you see these guys, how they start the move, where they use the actor's movement to start something, or they stop it, or, you know what I mean? Is learning all those little things. But that is by looking, concentrating, and you will find that this is what's great about this country, the concentrating, concentration, not just the grip. The focus pullers is just the grip. The focus working with a guy that I have no idea how he kept it sharp, but he was absolutely bang on every time, just sheer concentration and trust. He knew where I was going. He knew where the grip was, it's great. Work with the team.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I really like what you were saying about, empowering your crew. to do make their own choices. And yeah, that's really good stuff. I think it's a good philosophy.
Yeah, the organisation is. I wouldn't want to put a percentage on it, but almost all day I am thinking about what we're doing and what we're going to be doing, and then during that day I'm thinking the following day what's not happening now, because so many things can happen during the course of a day that means that the following day is completely different. Gary has a very experienced best boy working with him, and I have a best boy working with me, not on every job. It depends if it's a film or a larger TV job. We get that option, especially if we've got multiple crew members coming in, different kit coming in every day. But it can change at the drop of a hat. Even sort of 6-7 o'clock in the evening, you could be on a different stage the following morning. So yeah, I spend a huge amount of time thinking about what could happen or what is going to happen, because without organization it would be a disaster. I think if cranes weren't in the right position, or if the crew levels weren't right, or if things, we just can't let it happen. So it does need to be constantly sort of, I guess, monitored is probably the best way to describe it. I just monitor what's happening, but also if you're fortunate enough to have a best boy grip, so they take a huge, it's a full, it can be a very, very demanding full-time job being a best boy. I've been on some of Gary's jobs with him, and Giza, who's worked with Gary for many years, is extremely busy all day, but obviously Gary has to be across all of that information, or if I have a best boy, a huge amount of planning for even a small job. There's a huge amount of planning that goes into it.
Gary, do you find that's the same deal with you?
I'm very lucky actually, because I've had, as you mentioned, Gary, he's known as Giza Smith, with me for about 15 years now on every job. I don't think we've been apart, and he takes a massive load off me, to be honest. We've also working with me, he's just had a break this time, but Malcolm McGilchrist works with me, and these are people that can key grip themselves. I've got such a strong crew. I mean, a lot of the boys have had a break where they're doing their own films now, but if I went sick one day, Malcolm would look after it for me. We've done that. Giza is so efficient at that best boy job now. I mean, he takes so much of me. I just say some key grip style of films don't do the dolly; they do the more American style of organisation, really. But I love doing the dolly, and so I do the moves, and Giza looks after the rest of it. Really, I'll speak to the grown-ups, as we call them, and they say what we want. We want that crane on that roof, and I then talk to Giza. Look, we want a 50-foot crane tomorrow. It's got to go on that roof, and it's done. But I've also got the same standby as I've had for years. So everybody, we're all very, very close to one another. We all rely on, we all look after one another. You take that 1917 film, on a Friday night, there was a shot that Sam Mendes wanted to do that came out of the blue, and it entailed a 50-foot Techno crane, and it was in a field, and we were standing in this empty, trench there, but this field, we had nothing there. And it was a build for 200 foot, and it went 8 foot high. Now I had to say to the boys, sorry boys, we've got this, I want to do this Monday, we've got to come in Sunday. And they done it, no problem, all in the right place. I came in a bit later, everything was done. It was just showing you how no one moaned, they got on with it. It's just we're just all very close really, and everyone looks after everybody, It's a good little team I've got, and it makes me...
I've got another question. From Josh Ray. Hi all. Regarding the unexpected on the dance floor, to something a little unexpected as mentioned, such as actors not landing on their marks or even due to set design, could you advise how a camera shot in a high-level production budget would deviate from the storyboard or rehearsed camera shot? Ian, wonder if you could help us out with that one. I mean, obviously you can storyboard to your heart's content, but if you turn up and there's a different setup, you've got to go with it, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think unless there's a high level of VFX involved, I don't feel that we often work to storyboards or constrained by them in many ways. And I think dance floors give you that that freedom to change things at the last minute anyway. And there is often quite no right or wrong. It's just another viewpoint, another way to achieve the shot, or it develops as you go. So you turn up with the best intentions to do shot A, and you turn up there and the actors block out the scene, and an actor in every right to say, I don't think I'd do that, or go there, or sit there on that line, and you adapt and change. And that's what we do, and that's part of our job. So I feel, and everything that we do is not robotic, it's analog, and the grips go a long way with that, and the fact that, as Roddy was saying, quite often you can do so little with that, and the fact that look like you're working really hard, but you may, a lot of the work's been done for you in forward and backwards, up and down, and timing with people is all done by someone else. You can watch some great shots and think, wow, that's fantastically operated, but actually might not have done all that much at all, just looked intently through the eyepiece and and grip the pan bar tightly, but not end up with something fantastic at the end of it, but it's not what you turned up in the morning expecting to do. That's filmmaking, I guess, isn't it? There's no we don't have to follow strict lines, and I'm talking, I guess, more from not the mega budget where someone has prevised a shot to a very high level in a computer, and that is exactly what they're expecting to get. But certainly in the more TV side or smaller films, that there is no storyboard. There is an idea about how you want to come out of a scene with a way of it looking, and you do your best to do that, or even better.
Good, covered that one. Thanks for that question, Josh. Yeah, no, I think that was a good answer, because you're right. Things can massively change on the day. It's a creative process, isn't it? So it's not digital.
On the Star Wars film, you're saying about on a big budget film, but shots would change constantly with JJ. I mean, we would lay dance floors, and by the time an hour later, we'd have a completely different shot from what we started with, and he'd be improving the shot, constantly improving the shot. So I think the storyboard, unless it's, as you say, a specific computer-generated shot that has to be bang on, was just a guide. Oh, these are the shots we've got to get today, because every morning we would be changing that shot and working it until he was happy with a different style. So just to say that on the big films, it does do the same as TV. It does develop on the day as well. It's not all locked into specific shots.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good to know that it happens at every level. So anyone else throw in a question, please do. The tab is below. It says Q&A. Throw another question in if you would like. Jim and Ian, I wondered if you have any good.
Well, okay, right. I think you would say a lot of the job. Obviously, we all are all professionals, but you work very closely with the people, and you hopefully become friends with the people. And a lot of the time, we're not turning over for 12 hours a day. A lot of the rest of the time is as not downtime, but you're in between setups, and you spend a lot of time closely with people, and you want to get on with people. So yeah, probably most of our anecdotes are mostly humorous, because you try and enjoy your day. When it comes to it, you knuckle down and you do your job, and you take it very seriously. But I think Jim and I both agree that we'd like to keep it very professional, but a little bit of humor on the side as well. Just keep it
light-hearted. I mean, the days are long enough, and the work is quite hardcore at times. So you've got to have that little bit of release, don't you? Really, to keep.
Yeah, I think so, and I think one of Jim's great strengths is that his production-facing organization is fantastic, and there's no. He projects a lot of confidence in what it is that we want to achieve and what needs to be ordered, and timescales and things like that. So there's there's no comeback, or there's no decisions. We don't have time for this or that or the other. It is very professional, and it becomes a much then. Someone rolls their eyes and go, we're not going to have time to do that or the budget to do that. But then you have a grip backing you up saying, honestly, don't worry. It's all things that we have. It will all be taken care of. It will be there in the morning at 8 o'clock when you turn up. And it's great to have that backup, and having a fluid and effective system.
Makes the day go by, because as Ian sort of pointed out, you know, sometimes depending on the job, you can have big rehearsal times, and you could be ready for that. You might have the right kit for that scene. So there are some points, it is rare, but there are some points that you are literally sort of catching up, having an oat milk flat white together, which is one of Ian and myself's favourites.
What would we do without caffeine in TV and film?
I wouldn't go past call time, I don't think. But you know, no, it is crucial to, you know, I think the trick is to know when you can, like, not enjoy yourself, because I genuinely enjoy the filming process, but if you're going to have a laugh, I think it's knowing when you can and when you can't, and when you need to sort of essentially sort of listen and sort of be alert. And it's that balance between sort of knowing when you need to, right, okay, we're back on. You know what I mean? It's knowing when to, for Ian and I to stop talking about what he bought at Selfridges on Saturday, and then we can go back.
Oh, frozen at that point.
I was enjoying that. I was enjoying.
Well,
He's back. I got as far as Selfridges, and then we lost you there.
That was it.
Lost you there.
That was it.
Gary, have you got any good? I mean, you must have so many stories, surely, about, you know, some anecdotes of working on the job. Is it? I'm interested in. I know we'll talk about, like, this is all very good and this went well and we're all so great. But is there a time where you got something really badly wrong, and then you've gone, oh, you know, bugger, you know, what have I done here, kind of thing, and then learn from it?
Gripping was a bit of a mistake. I think that was my big mistake. I could tell you about the shot in Mexico, which was, it didn't really go wrong, but it was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my life. Was the opening sequence of Spectre. I don't know if you remember, and there was we had a 50-foot crane on a roof, and we went on the recce to Mexico City, and they said we don't want to do this on wire cam, we want to do it on a Technocrane. So okay, well this colossal, it's got chimneys and everything which had to be taken down. But the trouble was, then we fly back to England and we're not there for another 18 weeks. So you can't go back and recce it. And well, in the end, the construction man had done a fantastic build, and they hoisted it all up. And when we got there, we sent a grip over a week early to just test it out and send us videos how it was going, because I was so worried about this one shot. And Barbara Broccoli said that when we did get the shot, I think Callum McDougall just said, oh, that, well done, boys, really good shot. And Barbara said, yeah, it was the most expensive single camera shot in history. So, because it was like closing down Trafalgar Square for a one camera shot. I mean, that's the shot we done just one day. You're familiar with it.
How do you, yeah, absolutely. How do you,
worried things going wrong, you know?
I was wondering how you cope with that pressure, Gary, when
normally. Did it come through?
No, I didn't get that, sorry.
Don't sleep until it's over, really, I suppose. Wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. How's this going to work? But it went fine. Everything went fine. It's best to be nervous anyway, even after all the time, really. Keeps you on your toes.
Would you agree with that, Rod? Do you like to, if you've got some pressure moments, do you operate with a bit of nerves, bit of tension?
I think you always do, you know, because it's. I mean, I like to think that what I do is all the time, because you learn every day, every shot. You know what I mean? And that's what's beautiful about these sort of webinars, where different operators explain what they do and the rest of it. And even for me, I think, oh, right, okay, that's how they did that. And that's how I would have done it. Or I would have done it a little bit different. You know what I mean? And it just gives you that reassurance that you don't really know everything. You know, that there is another way of as valid as your own way, you know? And it's great. It's a really good thing to have, a certain amount of pressure in what you do. Like, it's always very good to have people around you that can have a laugh, you know, that actually make whatever you're doing, whatever pressure, after a while, a laugh, you know, a joke, you know, it brings it down to earth again, you know what I mean? And I think that those things are what's amazing about what we do, you know, because it's that sort of relationship with people. It's the pressure that you have. I mean, you know, we were talking before about having to do these fancy shots that have been computer generated maybe 3 years before. And I had to do one film, and looking at what we had to do and looking at the computer generated, maybe 5 grips, I got people on the piccolo, I got all this timing, the crane is 1.5 tons. I mean, this is major, you know, the movement that it happened. Now, obviously, depending on the director and depending on the director of photography, you got to give them the you know, if they are creative people, they will change things on the set for the better. You know what I mean? Because they are always evolving, improving. You know, so yeah. But it's good to have an edge. Every shot that you do or I do, I always, you know, it's like magic time. You know, here we go. You know, and you know.
Roger Tooley said a similar thing. He talks about that go time, I think, or something. No, he takes himself off to a space and gets himself mentally prepared. I think I remember him saying. Yeah. Sorry, Gary, I trod over you there.
No, so in the release, so you get in that zone and then you get it and you go, oh, and it's such a nice feeling when you get it. That's exactly 1917. I've never known, because of the nature of the shoot, which was like, as you know, one shot a day or 3 shots a day or whatever it worked out because of the weather. Every shot, when Sam was happy, he said, right, we got that. Everybody went, yes, because it was just, everything was pretty complicated. Obviously, you had the time, you had all day, or it wasn't like a normal shoot, but you do quite a few to get it. It took quite a bit, you know, sometimes to get it right. And when he was happy, it was a great feeling, really release.
Speaking of 1917, obviously this is a film where obviously predominantly the most of it that was shot was with a person in a stabilizer rig of some kind. Can you just tell us about, because I'm interested in that relationship with the operator where you've got their back and you're watching them, you're spotting them. Like, how important is that in that kind of situation on 1917?
Well, there wasn't as much of that actually as you'd think, actually, because I mean, when Pete or Charlie was with the Trinity or the Stickam, they were running flat out, and the stable eye was attached most of the time to the stable eye, which I don't know if you know is a small rig like that. I can't hold it out for too long, and following the actors while Roger would operate. So we'd follow the actors for long walks or taking it off a crane, following them on a crane, then taking it off a crane again while Roger operated. I'd be on headphones to James Deacons, and we would talk it through. She would say, oh, you're just getting a little bit too tight there, Gary, and I'd just ease back a little bit more as I was walking backwards or going forward. And that's basically how it worked with him. We just got the knack of taking it off of cranes smoothly in rehearsals and things like that, really.
Great job on that, by the way, as well. I really enjoyed 1917.
No one ever notices. Everyone talks about the big shots on the trenches. There's a shot which introduces Colin Firth as the general, and you to look at that shot, you see Colin Firth. We come around. No, it's on a 50-foot Technocrane in the studio, which as the crane is going in, because you see it on the wide shot, the trench and the roof. As we're going closer in, the roof is being lifted gradually as we're creeping in. As all the boys would know, the drop on a Technicrane is 5 foot. So from the top to where the camera is 5 foot. That was being lifted. It went over a table, and as I lifted it off the crane, it sucked back in because we cut the crane and went behind the curtain, the arm of the Technicrane, and then walked out. Now, you'd never know that. You see this shot, you'd never know. Everybody talks about the double crane shots in the trenches, the great run, but that shot was really tricky.
Yeah, it all comes out in the wash, doesn't it? It's what you end up is something really poetic, but behind it is highly technical stuff. So I'm going to take a couple of questions here. Let's see what we got.
In the on a BBC TV drama called Take a Girl Like You, and I'd never been on a film set. Not really. I've been on sort of stages, but I hadn't been on a working film set. And I had a work experience placement there for 2 months, and I wasn't sure what to be at, to be honest. I knew that I'd always loved camera work, and I felt like maybe the camera department, maybe it could be a job for me at that time. And I met a grip that he was sort of not short-staffed, but I ended up sort of helping him because I was a sort of bit of a spare part sometimes. And he said after that job, when you finish your course, if you'd like to train with me, you could come and work with me. And actually, I fell in love with it there, and I was with him for a couple of years, and it sort of flew by. I think there's more of a process now for becoming
just stick
with it. And
I lost it.
Can you hear me?
You're back.
Okay, but yeah, no. I spent the first sort of so I guess Tony Sankey inspired me to become a grip. I don't have any family in the film industry, so I didn't have anybody to inspire me until that moment, really. But it did the trick, and I've always said I'll carry on filming until as long as it works. I still love it. I still love it as much as I did, that's for sure. And a long time ago now, but we're still going, so it can't be all bad.
Ian, I wonder if you can throw in something as well. Do you have an operator hero or someone you started out and looking up to?
Yeah, well, I did. I was a loader for about 10 years, and for quite a lot of that time, I was working with an amazing focus puller, Rawdon Hayne, Lord Rawdon Hayne, formerly of Pangbourne, now of the Isle of Man, and he worked with Peter Robertson a lot. So Pete Rawds and I did quite a few films together. And
sorry, Ian, can I just interrupt you? I just remembered you did Hot Fuzz, didn't you? You worked on that.
I did do Hot Fuzz.
Absolutely great film. Love that film.
It was a great film. I was a loader on that. Yeah, Pete did some great work on there, and
brilliant film.
It was a very busy film. It was, I think it broke the record for the most number of cuts per screen time of any movie. It was we got to 1,000 slates in record time. But yeah, I did a lot of work with Pete, and he was very generous with his knowledge, and I spent a lot of time with his rig and watching him, and got a love for Steadicam through that. And Rawdon was a great person for advice in many ways, and he said, do you want to become a focus puller or do you want to become an operator? And had the conversation with Pete, and he was running the Steadicam course that year at the film school, and he had a place that came up, and I decided to take that, and that was sort of the push towards becoming an operator from that point on. But earlier, sort of whilst being a loader, I worked with Nick Ray, The Grip, Tony Turner. I did a couple of films with him as well, and as a loader, we're doing a lot of jibs and doing a lot of zoom much further forward and have a responsibility to how the shot works out. I learned a lot from that, and it just starts to pique your interest, and you start to think about what might be possible in the future. And worked with Rod many times as a loader as well, and great orators for the love of operating. So Rod loves to tell a story. I love to listen to it, and many other operators too. So I was very sure about where I wanted to go, and had a good length of time whilst being a loader of knowing that's where I wanted to do. And as soon as you know that, you start to tune into a lot more about what's happening with the camera, rather than just doing your one job. You've got another eye on what else is going on. So
I think that's so important, isn't it, to keep half an eye on your next step up. If you are ambitious and you want to get up in the world, you're keeping that sort of half an eye on. You're learning all the time, aren't you?
yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's great what you said about including the crew in the creative process as well. That's so important. I remember doing a few Zooms myself, and it gives you a buzz, doesn't it? And that's so important. Rod, what about you? You got any sort of mentors or people you learned from starting out?
Well, I mean, I in a way, I came through. I always, once I decided I love films, and that happened to me. I was quite young, and I got completely into Italian films. I was really, obsessed with them. And I didn't want to be anything else. I just wanted to be an operator. So my influences really, I mean, guys like Michael Chapman in New York, one of the top operators that I have ever seen. I mean, he was renowned for being Mike Proudfoot. I mean, another guy that, he did a film. Oh, I can't remember the name. It was about a correctional, this young kids correctional place. Can't remember the name at the moment. And he did it all handheld, and his handheld was just amazing, way before it became fashionable, So those guys opened my eyes to what you could actually do with a camera, and directors of photography, not from the point of view of lighting, funnily enough, but from the point of view of narrative. Guys like Roger Deakins, I mean, his narrative with the camera is amazing, second to none, Seamus McGarvey, John Matheson. I mean, guys like that actually looking at what they do, and they just enhance an image. The way that they look at something, and then I went through a period earlier on in my career as an operator that I had an incredible opportunity to working with Eastern European directors of photography, and they were like little professors. I mean, they used to light the set. And then they used to say, okay, and you used to say, oh, but there is a lamping shot. And they all go, oh, you're the operator, frame it out. Create the shot with you don't see my lamp, And you learn. I mean, you learn. And they were fantastic. They taught me huge amounts of about camera work and, Eastern European cinema moving. They were great storytellers by keeping the camera moving, or the one shot thing, and how to tell the story, so those really were my heroes. That's how I sort of saw myself operating. I always saw myself sitting. When I was a child, I saw a photograph of this operator that had, and I always saw myself. I saw this photo and I thought, that's what I want to be. I want to sit on that crane at the top with my hat the other way around. Never did it. By the time
There's still time.
The cranes, but yeah.
Nice. Gary, what about you? And did someone teach you, to be a grip, or how did you get back to it?
To a certain extent, but not that long. I worked for London Weekend Television from leaving school. I was 16, and I was a postboy. At 18, I got a job as a prop man. There's a stagehand there, but building the sets. So we were working on the shows, things like Within These Walls. I don't know if you remember Gentle Touch. Maybe Rod might. remember these sort of TV dramas. And I was doing that for a while. And I was really enjoying it. I had 2 young children. Everything was great. Then they said the dramas, they're now going to shoot a lot of dramas on film. And they'd like to, and the head of who Rod would know, Mike Humphreys, said they're going to train 2 guys up to be grips for them because they had a couple of focus pullers, they had a couple of cameramen, they had no grips. So I think I started a thing called Dutch Girls with Roger Pratt did it. I don't know if you know of Roger Pratt, the cameraman. And the grip was, I think, Dennis Rogers, who sadly passed. And then I went on to Dempsey and Makepeace with Dennis, done that as well for a little while. And then I was with Tony Cridlin for a little while on the early London's Burn-ins. And then Tony went off to do something else, and they said, Gary, would you mind taking over? But there wasn't the amount of equipment that you've got for you now. You know, there was no oversliders, there was no Technocranes, there was very limited from what you've got now. I think stabilised heads were just coming out, levers were just coming out really. So I had a little truck there with about, I don't know, 100-foot of track on it, and an Ellie dolly and a Pee-wee, and we had a lorry for the standby. When I grew up in Paddington, and we had cinemas 100 yards there and 100 yards. I was always in the cinema. Mum would give me a couple of bottles, and it's just one of my ambitions was to do a film that all the family sat down to on Christmas Day. You know, I thought it'd be lovely just at 3 o'clock. Well, of course, it's all changed now with the Sky, but I think the closest I ever got was, I think, Nanny McPhee. I'd done that, and I think that went out one Christmas at 3 o'clock, and I thought, that's it. I've cracked it now.
Tick that box. Nice. I also had a question from Kat Spencer. Hi, Kat. That's also asking how what attracted Gary and Jim to the grip department. But I think kind of covered that, or do you think there's anything to add to that? Maybe just a short answer. We're running out of time. Jim.
Do you want me to answer it, Gary? It's an unusual profession in a way. No, unless you're in the film industry, very few people have heard of a grip. So it was a bit of a surprise to me that I liked it, because until I'd seen it, I didn't really know anything about it. But I like engineer. I'm really into sort of engineering, and I've always engineering, and being behind a dolly or swinging a crane. It's
yeah.
When he's saying it's,
so,
I was like, oh, what is it?
And there's dramatic pause.
Yeah.
it's quite addictive.
Yeah.
Ever going to run its course, but it's still there for me. But yeah, it is a sort of an unheard of profession to anybody that's outside of the film industry. But yeah, I love it.
Thanks for that, Kat. Just want to quickly just share some media while we've got a moment. We'll start with some of Ian and Jim. Oh, this is Jim's stuff. Sorry.
Is it of Ian?
If you want it to be.
No. I've saved those.
So this is just give us we're running out of time a little bit, but if you just give us a brief overview of some of these little works.
I'm just waiting for something to come up on the screen here, I think.
Oh, can you not see that?
It's just screen sharing at the moment, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it up. They're coming up on my screen.
I've only got you, Ian, which is lovely. But what's the picture?
Are you on an iPad?
Yeah.
I think you might have to go to click on something else, a gallery view or something.
You missed the tracking vehicles with Sean Savage sitting in the back.
Fine. Thanks, Gary. That's perfect. Yeah, that was on Watchmen series with and Chris Seeger was the cameraman. and Sean wanted to. We needed to do a lower shot on the horse, on the hoofs galloping up through the field, but he also wanted a close up. I think it was Jeremy Irons who was on a horse. So they didn't want him to keep the vehicle that's quicker than the thing that you think you're tracking, so that you can out accelerate it or adjust.
Good bit of advice, that, actually. Oh, you're back, Jim. We've got the blue screen stuff up now.
The blue screen, that Charlie Wildeck was keen the second unit of Hobbs and Shaw, but they wanted to, and I went in for a couple of weeks, and they wanted to do it was a truck stunt, and the cab of the truck was corkscrewing through the air, so they wanted a profile and a front shot. I had a really nice rig of Jay Enver, and Jay put a frame underneath the cab, and I rigged off of that with some sort of a lighter weight tube that we carry to get those positions, and then they mounted the truck cab onto a Special Effects built a rotation rig for the truck and the cameras to rotate, so the stunt guys inside could fall around in the cab whilst the stunt happened.
Nice. And that's a picture of you on a bike. So
Oh
no, or is that a bike, or yeah?
I can't see what you're looking at, Ed.
Well, you checkered shirt, sitting on a bike, looking cool.
Oh no, that was for the profile picture. That's just Greg.
I know, but we still got to look at it, Jim. Still got to look at it. It's an important picture, that.
I might have borrowed it to drive down onto set, maybe. I can't rule it out. I probably thought. You're all back.
All back. I'll just have a quick look at some of Ian's stuff. This is you working on what? Looking good.
That's on Cats, on the unit with Sean Savage. There is Dave Morgan under an easy up, I think, in the corner on his own. And my focus puller, Spooky, looks like he's shouting at me, telling me if he wants my opinion, he'll give it to me. And yeah, there was a little island in the middle of an ice lake where everything was up high, so they had a couple of cranes to do that, and then I was in on the third camera, so thrown in. That's just a thing that happens. That's getting a bit more light for our photo of the two of us on the hollow crown.
Yeah, always need that. Yeah, could bring that bloody flame bar in just so.
Yeah, that wasn't for lighting. That was just for us. And that's Jim.
Is that the same shirt that Jim's got on now?
Probably.
This looks a nice job.
Yeah, that was in Greece, and I think Jim was trying to blend in with the locals with the moustache. Did a great job. Yeah, I think that might be all I sent.
Shows your working relationship there. It's good. And we've got a couple from Gary. If I can get my bits sorted out. Gary. Sorry, bear with me. Oh no. It's all going so well. Okay, here we go.
Oh, this is on. This is in it. Oh, that's changing now to the stars.
Sorry.
This is on Solo, which was one of the Star Wars spin-off films, and we had to helicopter. We couldn't get a Technocrane. The ground was so bad. We helicoptered all the cranes. We had 2 cranes, and we're just following them all around during the fight. We follow them on the lever and up and down, and yeah, great fun. That's why I got the headphones onto the operator there. You see? Yeah,
on the comms.
This is an old one.
It's vintage.
Some of the quite vintage. This is probably, well, I wouldn't like to say. This is a film, I think, Titanic Town, which I can't remember, which Julie Walters starred in. A low budget set in Belfast. as John Daly's the cameraman now. I think some of the boys know him. I think Rob would know. I think he won a couple of BAFTAs a few years ago. Steve Wallace is the focus puller there, who now runs Lens Control, and people use Lens Control. And Paul Lang, who's a documentary cameraman. And they're really young fellows, me there, handsome chap there. This is Rogue One now. And this is interesting because they want to do a lot of handheld shots, but still use the equipment. So we would sit on made a seat for the dolly, and went handheld, as we've done with this crane with a long track of him running out. But what's interesting, this is shot in Bovingdon, and they've built palm trees and sand everywhere. But the reverses were in the Maldives, which was actually harder work than being in Bovingdon, but you wouldn't believe it. So I couldn't convince my wife that, but it was. And this is obviously the one that everyone knows. It's because it's current at the moment. This was 1917. I think at the last count, 11 grips were involved in this shot.
Wow.
It started at the other end of the side of the trench on a 50-foot Technocrane. Went to the other side of the trench, following him up. Got taken off and then been lifted on by a couple of chaps, and then took over. And then the boys took over, and he's just about. I think that's Russell O'Connor on the pickle there. Just as George, there's the main actor there, runs. He's just about to push out and go down into the trench. So it's hopefully seamless for the next pickup. That's the end of his long run, which is shown in all the promos.
Fantastic shot that, Gary. So fits of the UK grip/spark system in the current climate, thinking about the need for social distancing to keep people in bubble groups. I'm a producer, by the way, and listening. Rodrigo, have you got a short answer for that, or is that a completely a bigger topic, do you think?
Because it's a bigger topic, and I actually, maybe Gary or Jim will have a better idea, because it's there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there scene, you know?
That's a big union issue. I think that's quite a big conversation there with the different unions and over here retraining. They'd have to train to do our job. Them groups would have to train. We don't touch the lights or the flags, and obviously we're not trained electricians. We have to have quite a few years qualifications. I'm not saying it could never happen, but it won't happen in the near future. I wouldn't think.
We've got a message. I think it was very early on. I guess very. Let's have a look. I guess one from Pete Cavaciuti. I think this is Gary. He says, question for Gary is: was it difficult moving from black and white silent films through to sound and colour? I don't know if that's.
Yeah. Could you ask him what time to use out, please, to work with? Last time I needed a nip and tuck.
Well, thanks everyone for coming on and having this conversation. Really appreciate it. It's been a good laugh and been really informative as well. So thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, Ian, Gary. Thank you, Jim, Rodrigo, and stay safe, and we'll do. We'll catch you next time.
Okay.
All right, take care.
All the best.
Hi,
Cheers.
Guys, thanks very much.
Bye-bye. Dinner time.